Kicking off the list at number 10, lost treasure. All right, listen up, you buccaneers. There have been so many shipwrecks all throughout history that right now, at this moment, there's about $60 billion worth of sunken treasure just waiting, just out there waiting for you to put on your goggles and explore. Deep sea exploration teams have found a few recently. That's exciting. Back in 2012, we discovered the Port Nicholson, which was a World War II British merchant ship that sunk with 70 tons of platinum ingots. So many ingots. Ingots. All the ingots or gits. That's over $3 billion worth of treasure. Not too shabby. Shortly after that, shipwreck hunters found the remains of HMS Victory, ironic name, which sank back in 1744 with $1 billion worth of gold. It's not just finders keepers though, you know, as lovely as that sounds, this is not national treasure. Treasure belongs to people, before and after the commute. When an American company recovered $500 million in gold and silver from a ship in Spain that went down back in 1804, they lost the rights to their treasure. They lost the rights to the treasure they found. That is so, can you imagine that? Guys were rich. Just kidding. The Senora de la Mercedes was a Spanish ship that sunk back in 1804. It was loaded with gold, silver, and spices, all the good stuff. It was found at the bottom of the Atlantic back in 2007, and these finders thought that they had 500 million. We're rich, and we can maybe pay off our student loans with this money. Who knows? They were rich until the Spanish government sued the exploration team in 2012, taking all that treasure right back. All of this treasure. Yeah, not theirs anymore. Number 9, magnificent alien. How don't I talk about this little guy? Here we go. While the rest of the world was in panic mode, a new sea sponge was discovered in 2020, named Advena magnifica, which translates to magnificent alien. Literally, this thing's a little alien by himself. This sponge literally gets its name because it looks like ET. And to be fair, yeah, it looks like ET. Little phone home looking. An ROV found this sample over 6,000 feet deep in the Pacific Ocean. They found it in what they called a forest of weird. That's just what you want to hear. Hey, how's the ocean? Oh, it's weird. Great, I'm not gonna ask anymore. Just alien sponges sticking their ET heads out hoping for some passing food. That's what the ocean is. Cristiana Costello Branco, the researcher who found this deep sea squishy, explains the discovery in an NOAA interview, saying, as all of these organisms are intricately connected, by documenting and describing marine biodiversity, we are building a better understanding of life and the impact of humans on Earth, and in this case, in the ocean. End quote. This little guy is the key to humanity's survival. I feel it. You can see it in his eyes, really, he's confident. Number 8, underneath Thwaites Glacier. We've seen some fascinating stuff here on Most Amazing Top 10, specifically underwater footage. We can't get enough of it. We love exploring the deep, as do you, hence why you're here. Hi, welcome back, thank you. Hit that thumbs up. This next one, I honestly couldn't believe. It's actual footage from the bottom of an Antarctic glacier. This glacier, though, is the size of Florida. So if it collapses, our sea levels could rise 10 feet. So yeah, let's drill a hole through the middle and see what's up. We'll send a camera down, no problem. In 2019, researchers did just that. They drilled 2,300 feet through the Thwaites Glacier, dropped a robot with a camera down it, and saw this. Now this is the first time we've ever seen the grounding zone of Thwaites Glacier. Lead scientist Brittany Schmidt says this project is a dream come true. Yeah, no doubt, this is beautiful. She describes it as her walking on the moon moment. There's only a meter of space between the bottom of the glacier and the rocky seafloor. Would you swim underneath it? Be honest. I would. No, I wouldn't. I would do this and come back really quick. Number 7, the rare whalefish. Located in California's Monterey Bay, scientists were able to get a close look at a fish with no eyes. So he probably didn't know he was being filmed. That's just unfair if you ask me. This little guy over here relies on his other senses to hunt and pick up on its surroundings. This footage was from over 6,000 feet deep, so the lack of light just decided the whalefish doesn't need eyes anymore in evolution. Isn't that great when evolution's like, you know what? You don't need eyes. It's pretty dark. You're good. Give me them, Jeepers Creepers, give me your eyes. It's great to get footage of them because whalefish are rarely recorded in the deep, let alone recorded alive. This guy is alive and well. Look at him go. Not too fast, not too slow, he's on his own pace. He's doing his own thing. Number 6, not treasure. We kicked this list off with some deep sea treasure. That's always fun, you know, until it gets reclaimed and your year's worth of exploring goes to waste. But many deep sea ROV trips are not ideal. They're not fun. We don't always find a mammoth tusk or a glow-in-the-dark shark. Sometimes we find barrels of waste. This dump site here was discovered off the coast of LA, 3,000 feet deep. These ROVs found around 27,000 barrels of waste. Yeah, you thought I was gonna say 27. That's pretty bad. Add thousands. The 2021 discovery was deemed staggering. Yep, I'd say so. You can literally see in these photos this aura of toxic waste like emitting from it. I don't see any ET sponges here. This is a graveyard. This is no good. ET wants nothing to do with this. Number 5. Hydromedusae. Sounds like a spell. Sounds like a Harry Potter spell. Another crazy deep sea alien fish. Here we go. Let's do it. Never swimming again after this list. During a robotic exploration of the Marianas Trench in 2016, which is a pretty good place to get some deep sea fishies, researchers found a new unidentified species of jellyfish. How fun is that? We mentioned the immortal jellyfish on here before. That's always a good time. The jellyfish that Benjamin Buttons it. He ages backwards. That's cool. This is another crazy one, just a lot deeper. At first, it had its tentacles spread out as if it was ready to, catch some prey or some human or some ship. I don't know. It's ready for something. The tentacles act as a net, catch prey, which is interesting. A fish that fishes with a net. How lovely is that? Also super alien. He was found near the Enigma seamount at a depth of 3,700 meters. Hydromedusae jellyfish has a translucent bell, which is the most intriguing part when you look at it. Oh, also its insides are glowing red and yellow. So yeah, did I mention alien possibly? Because maybe. Number 4, deep sea hermit crab. The deep sea hermit crab, do I have to talk about it? I guess I have to talk about it. Instead of carrying around empty gastropod shells like a hermit crab normally does, the hermit crab we imagine when hearing their name, these deep sea hermit crabs carry around sea anemones with them. Yeah, they just walk on stilts. Look at these dudes. I'm sorry, deep sea crabs on stilts. I'm all set. This almost was number 1. This is almost worse than a spider. Let's pray he stays at the deepest depths of the Atlantic. Number 3, deep sea pigs. It's not what you think, don't worry, it's not horrible. These guys are a genus of sea cucumber, but they have these little tube-like legs and they look really cute, which is why I have to include them. Cute, also a little bit weird. These ones look weirder than normal sea cucumbers, which is an odd statement to make, but I'll stand by it. They like to live on the seafloor where they move through the sediment searching for their next meal, and they eat by extracting tiny little particles of organic matter that have fallen from the surface of the ocean. So they're just there, just waiting for scraps, just looking around. How sad is that? So hungry. Sea pigs measure around 4 to 6 inches long, so yeah, they're pretty cute. They're tiny guys. I'll admit it, they're cute. And they live at a depth of somewhere between 1,200 to 5,000 meters deep, so don't worry about any of these little piggies touching any of your little piggies when next time you take a dip, because they're quite deep. Small but mighty, their skin carries a natural poison, which would make them a horrible midnight snack, as squishy as they look. When brought up closer to the surface, they literally disintegrate, so don't try it if you see one. It's like the video of the raccoon where he tries to wash cotton candy. He puts it in and disappears. He's like... Number 2, the deepest plastic. We're almost done here, so we'll do a sad one for our second last spot here. Why not? Back in 2019, Victor Vescovo took a dive into the Challenger Deep, which is the deepest part of the Marianas Trench, and he found absolutely the scariest thing to ever see in the ocean. A plastic bag. Yeah, you don't want any of this in the ocean, for sure. Some guy brought some spaghetti home for the family, tossed the bag out, now it's all the way down here, and he has no idea. Awesome. I will say Victor broke the record for deepest dive, which of course is amazing for, science, research, and advancements and all that jazz, of course. But I feel like the more we discover and the deeper we go, the more we realize that we're inevitably doomed. And finally, number 1, the deep sea anglerfish. So scary. Here we go. Let's end off on a scary note. Even scarier than pollution. It's not. Close. The deep sea anglerfish is just a sample of how terrifying the ocean can really be. We have no idea. It's also the most fascinating fish I've ever seen in my life. Living at depths of over 6,000 feet, the anglerfish lives in complete darkness. It was first discovered back in 1833 when it washed ashore somehow in Greenland, and then it was studied in Denmark. It was first referred to as the football fish or the mangobbler. Mangobbler is honestly more of a, I could definitely see that. The sea devils have quite the smile, but they don't often get a chance to show it, being that deep and all and in the darkness. Finding prey that deep below the surface is quite the task. The ocean life is also quite sparse when it comes to meals of your choosing. Like I said, some of these guys have to just rely on just particles falling into their mouths. This is why it's often referred to as the fish that fishes. And it's all thanks to that little disco ball of death right here on the forehead. Female anglerfish have a glowing lure on the top of their head, and it's awesome, it's beautiful. This light is created due to bioluminescent bacteria. Thousands of fish have it, and the deep sea anglerfish uses it to hunt. It draws fish in right in front of its massive mouth, and then they see the light, and then moments later, bam, they see another light, the light of the fish gods. R.I.P. Rest in Pacific. Not bad. Kicking off the list at number 10. Glow-in-the-dark shark. Yeah, you thought left shark was the coolest fish in the pond? Think again, pal. Glow-in-the-dark sharks. Apparently, we got them. Terrifying. 2 years ago, scientists were able to identify 3 deep-sea sharks. The kitefin, the black-belly lantern, and the southern lantern shark. All 3 of them look like they're from Pandora. They're glowing. They're literally glowing. Bioluminescence is fascinating. We mentioned the deep sea anglerfish in part 1 of this list. So now we've got glowy gill Gary over here to worry about. Awesome, I'm never swimming again. These sharks were found in the Twilight Zone, around 1,000 meters deep off the coast of New Zealand. Yep, never swimming again, ever again. Let's move on. Number 9. the frilled shark. Another scary shark. Awesome. Back in 2004, marine biologists discovered this dinosaur, the frilled shark, if you want to call it a shark, okay. It was lurking about 870 meters below the surface. This one looks like an eel, almost. It's so scary looking. Oh, I hate this. I hate the ocean. Frilled sharks can grow up to 7 feet long, and they fight like Daredevil. They can hunt in complete darkness. They don't need to see anything to whoop your ass. Remember that next time you're skinny dipping. Unless you can hold your breath for a seriously long time, you won't run into the frilled shark anytime soon. They're only found about a mile below the surface, so sleep swimmingly tonight. Number 8. Black dragonfish. All of these fish are so scary looking, and no, not all of these things are fish. Just a few off the hop, because, get them out of the way. The black dragonfish is the first time scientists have found an ultra black deep sea fish. This thing is awesome. I love this. The black dragonfish literally has the word dragon in it, and I'm not surprised. He fits it. He fits the picture. These little guys can be found at depths of 1,600 feet, and you'll see this one coming towards you, as these fish too possess bioluminescence. If you can't tell from these photos, they also have teeth. They have big, scary, dragon-like teeth. Even Khaleesi would see this and be like, no, I'm good. Number 7. Apollo 11. They say space and the ocean are pretty similar, but nobody expected to find this. The engines of the Saturn V rocket that fell off during the Apollo 11 missions. They should have never been found, realistically. The odds here are just mind-blowing. Right off coastal Florida waters, found 16,000 feet below the ocean surface. These things are massive. They're so heavy we could barely get them out of the sea. You know who found this thing laying on the ocean floor for more than 40 years? Jeff Bezos. Yep, Amazon CEO Jeffrey Bezos. JBs. He found this. He found these back in 2012. What's the shipping fee for a couple of Apollo 11 rockets? It's probably not cheap. Number 6. USS Johnson. Once a US Navy destroyer, the USS Johnson sank during the Battle of Samar back in 1944. It sank after a battle with a large fleet of Japanese warships. Victor Vescovo, one of the few to reach the Marianas Trench, was the first one to stumble upon the remains of this sunken warship. The remains were found quite recently, back in 2019, and it's now known as the deepest known shipwreck of all time, which is a weird brag. She was found 6,450 meters deep in the Philippine Sea in the Pacific Ocean. To quote Victor, who at the time was leading said expedition, he says, "The wreck is so deep that there's very little oxygen down there, and while there is a little bit of contamination from marine life, it's remarkably well intact except for the damage it took from the furious fight," end quote. The ship is so deep that it took them a handful of trips just to locate the thing entirely. There were 327 crew members on board the ship during the battle, and sadly, only 141 of them survived. The diving team was respectful about their mission, and they laid wreaths both before and after their dives, which is just a nice thing to note off at this point, honestly. Number 5. Underwater civilization. As we found out in part 1 of this series, the ocean, being mostly undiscovered, is terrifying. Yep, never going in it again, for sure. But discovering a long-lost civilization underwater, okay, I'll admit, that's not scary. That's actually kind of cool. It's pretty neat. We like those. Found 65 feet below sea level off the coast of Sweden. Researchers from Lund University found a Stone Age civilization that dates to around 9,000 years old. They found artifacts that are in great condition, all things considered. They even found an elk antler axe. How epic is that? That's some Elder Rings kind of stuff right there. That's some good loot. Some of these discoveries, they still have to work out. They're not even sure what they found. What researchers do know is that this ancient civilization, they had a healthy life based on what they found. There's lots of food. Findings suggest that it was warm out often. It was great and all, until the sea rose up and swallowed the Swedish lagoon. The forest surrounding the lagoon just ceased to exist, and we're not really sure why. The more ocean we discover, the more we learn about our past. And if we can also find treasure along the way, that would be helpful. That'd be great. Number 4. USS Nevada. The USS Nevada was lost in 1948, and it wasn't until a year ago where she was seen again. Yeah, the USS Nevada was referred to as the unsinkable ship, and here's why. During the 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor, the USS Nevada was the only battleship to get away in one piece, but barely. It took years of repairs after that, but she returned to battle later in 1944 to support the Normandy invasion. A year later, it assisted in 2 atomic bomb tests, and post-World War II, she was finally deemed too ancient for service. So the Navy used the USS Nevada as target practice, and it took them 5 days and lots of power to finally sink it. How impressive is that? They almost couldn't sink the ship when they tried. That's kind of brilliant. A torpedo was the final strike, and after it sank, the Navy wasn't even sure where exactly it ended up. It was more than 15,000 feet below the surface, so it could have gone literally anywhere. Cut to only a couple years ago, a joint expedition by Ocean Infinity and Search Inc., led by Dr. James Delgado, they found her, just 65 nautical miles southwest of Pearl Harbor, all the way down. Number 3. Amelia Earhart's plane. Yeah, you heard me. How epic is this? The first woman to fly across the Atlantic, she was well on her way to settling even more groundbreaking records, but her plane tragically disappeared over the Pacific in 1937. It's since been a great mystery where the final resting place of Amelia Earhart now is, but we may have actually found her remains back in 1940 on the Pacific island of Nikamuraro. The initial examination of these remains were reported to be that of a man. That was the general idea in 1941, but come 2018, we have a different idea now. Something's come up. Researcher Richard Jantz took another look at the long-lost remains, and since then, photos of Amelia have surfaced, so Richard compared the bone measurements to her body type, and we're pretty sure that's her. But in a recent discovery, May 2021, a murky image went viral, and many believe it's Amelia Earhart's plane submerged in Nikamuraro Lagoon. Back in 1991, part of a plane fuselage was recovered, but it was too damaged to confirm that it was her plane from when it went down in 1937. Do you think it's her? Sound off below. I do, definitely. Or else someone else's remains are out there, and that's also wild. Let's discover who that is. Number 2, crop circles. Before we end off this list, we'll get a little cute, dare I say. Crop circles on the ocean floor. Are these aliens? Alien fish? Do we have this now? Is this a scary shark? What's going on here? These crop circles were first spotted back in 1995 off the southern coast of Japan, and for 16 years, these things were blowing the minds of divers or deep sea explorers. Nobody knew where they were coming from. They would be there one week, and then the next day would be gone. Tiny aliens or tiny pufferfish. That's right, in 2011, one of these dudes got caught in 4K, and it's one of the weirdest things I have ever seen. I had to squeeze it in some sort of deep sea list. I love showing this little guy off. These male pufferfish, they try and lure in the ladies by making art. Some birds dance like crazy, some fish make art, okay? Animals have souls, deal with it. The thing that baffles me here, concerns me if anything, is that these pufferfish use a shell. They use a shell in their mouth, they grab it, and then they scoop out these designs. He uses a tool to carve away his emotions. Small but mighty, and also an artist. And finally, number 1, squid graveyard. During a 2012 expedition in the Gulf of California, lurking all the way at the bottom of the seafloor, scientists came across a bunch of squid carcasses and squid egg sheets, which, I mean, you know, in your working day, that's a lot to see, just going along, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, yikes, okay. But anywho, once they took photos, they got footage, all was good, they returned. Come 2015 though, that's when these deep dives get a little mysterious. When they returned to the exact same area, they found even more carcasses and even more squid egg sheets. What's going on? Why here? Is this like a hotspot? So many questions. Many species of squid will see the adults all join in large groups and lay clusters of eggs in the seafloor, but shortly after this, many of the adults will die. Nature is cruel. This is the case for most things. But it's not the case for every squid, however. There are some mothers who instead lay their eggs on an egg sheet, which they keep in between their arms for months. And when the babies finally hatch, the mother will then drift her way down to the seafloor. So this answers why that squid died, but it doesn't answer why there's so many bodies and so many types of squid births and stuff happening in one specific zone. And that answer still remains a mystery, hence why it's our number 1 today. Kicking off the list at number 10, SS Garsopa. We'll kick off this deep sea part 3 with a shipwreck. Whenever it comes to underwater stuff, I think I have thalassophobia. These were hard to look at and look into, rather. I got chills looking at these photos, honestly. The SS Garsopa was once a thriving British cargo ship. Back in 1941, during World War II, the cargo ship was en route, returning from India carrying a pretty nice amount of silver. It was a lot of silver, an alarming amount of silver. A storm rolled in, so the captain made a quick decision, knowing what was on board, to avoid the rough waters as much as possible. So the ship changed direction and started heading towards Ireland. Again, this was 1941 during World War II, so not a great time to head that direction. The ship was spotted by a German plane, and a U-boat later claimed the lives of the SS Garsopa's 85 passengers. News traveled quickly, and once the war came to an end, a few divers checked out the area. There was nothing. Now fast forward to 2011, Odyssey Marine's team found the ship. 14,000 feet below the surface, surrounded by just pure darkness. The team kept around 80% of the treasure found, and the rest went to Her Majesty's treasury. In case you were wondering, there was around $150 million worth of treasure found. Yeah, if you can do it, then go grab it, sure. It's like one of those things where someone's like, hey, you want $150 million? Go into this deep, dark, scary thing. Would you do it? No, my answer is no. Number 9, Ram's horn squid. This little squishy dude was discovered around 3,000 feet below the surface, and scientists cannot stop talking about the way he moves. Look at him, he looks like a really slow submarine, which is pretty amazing when you think about the Schmitz Ocean ROV that's down there getting this footage. It's also a submarine. How funny is that? He's looking at him, he's looking at them. They're like, what? He's like, what? They're all just both wiggling, trying to balance each other out. His body acts like a submarine's ballast does. Fluids and gases shift around, and in return, this little guy can float up and down whilst wiggling his toes. Look at him. I never thought a squid would be cute until now. Didn't know that was a possibility. Yet here we are. Part 3, most amazing. Cute squid. Number 8, Catherine Sullivan. Not really a deep sea discovery, but I mean, when talking about all these discoveries, you gotta ask, who goes down there? Who does the thing, right? When an entertainer wins an Oscar, Emmy, Tony, and Grammy, we call that an EGOT. Fun little title only a handful of artists can claim. But what about somebody who's been to both space and the deepest part of our Earth? What do we call them? Well, so far, them is just one individual. Her name's Catherine Sullivan. The former NASA astronaut decided to change up directions for this trip, so she joined Victor Vescovo on one of his 8 trips to the deepest known point on Earth. July 7th, 2020, Catherine Sullivan officially became the first person to do both. Go out there and then down there. That's crazy. Your Fitbit's like, what are you doing? What's happening? How many steps is this? What can we call this impressive title? EGOT, a deep got? A deep got go-getter? A deep go-getter? Yeah, you're a deep go-getter. That sounds awful. We're doing our best here. Maybe part 4 will have a fun name. It's impressive. It's so impressive my ears hurt thinking about all these commutes. Bravo. Hats off to you. Number 7, Holy Grail of shipwrecks. Okay, back to shipwrecks. It's hard to read up on these shipwrecks sometimes, well, all the time, because on one hand, it's fascinating to discover parts of our history we thought was once lost forever. Of course, we find tons of treasure. That's always fun and noteworthy, but we're also exploring the scene of a horrible wreck every single time. It's quite grim, not on paper. In 1708, the San Jose galleon was heading to Spain from Colombia, but when the British attacked, the San Jose sank to the ocean floor and nearly all 600 crew members lost their lives. Yeah, dark history. In 2015, the ship was found with around 17 to 22 billion dollars worth of plundered valuables. See, back in the 80s, Glocamora Company claimed they had found the ship. Colombia was lacking the financial and technological resources to dive down and actually get it, so they agreed to give GMC 35% of the findings. In 1984, they then handed the rights over to an American company, Sea Search Armada. Then the game changed. Since then, and still to this day, legal battles have been unfolding over this lost treasure. COVID delayed it quite a bit, so if you can hold your breath for a really long time, it's still waiting there. No one knows what to do with it yet. I'm like, see ya, be right back. Number 6, the Vasa shipwreck. Back in 1628, the Vasa sunk within 20 minutes of setting sail, and it claimed the lives of 30 souls on board. How tragic is that? Only 20 minutes and it was gone. The Swedish Navy launched the ship August 10th, 1628, and it was once considered a high-tech warship, even referred to as spectacular. So what happened? How did this thing sink in 20 minutes? That's crazy. Well, the first rush of wind caught it off guard and it swayed a bit. The second rush of wind sank it. There's gotta be more. There was a crowd around and everything to send it off, but the 64 bronze cannons that were installed during the rushed process of building the ship were too heavy. That's why it sank. And the lack of oxygen in the water allowed for its rediscovery to continue its story. The Vasa was built with carvings all around the wood, carvings centered around the king of the time, King Gustav II. So when the wreck was rediscovered in 1961, 95% of the wood was still intact, so it still tells the story. Number 5, Under the Ice. This dark discovery was pretty recent. Recent as in October 2021. The Hakon project is one I would never sign up for personally, but I'm surprised it's taken this long to do something along these lines. The Hakon project is a group of around 30 scientists. They teamed up to send a deep sea robot 13,000 feet below the icy surface of the Arctic Ocean. This was the first time we got to see the hidden volcanic vents that have been hiding for centuries, because obviously it's that deep and that cold, and now we have the resources and people who are brave enough to go and camp out in the Arctic to go explore. That's crazy. Number 4, Ancient Greek shipwreck. I remember hearing about this back in 2018, so I'm excited I get to throw it on a list. The oldest shipwreck discovered in the Black Sea. It looks like it sank 50 years ago, but actually this ship is from 400 BC. It's an ancient Greek trading vessel and it's not very large, but somehow this thing is very mighty. 2,400 years later, over a mile below the surface, the lack of oxygen again actually preserved this ship. That's why it looks not ancient. John Adams, principal investigator with the Black Sea Marine Archaeology Project, describes the findings as something he never thought was even possible. Yeah, more than fair. That long ago, like, we're still trying to figure out the pyramids. We're like, oh my god, this thing's just chilling there the whole time. Just a fish is staring at it. This discovery changed what we knew about seafaring in the ancient world. The oldest intact shipwreck known to mankind. That's not a bad title. Another 2,000 years we'll find nothing but plastic on the bottom of our oceans. Number 3, underwater river. We've heard about this one at some point, I'm sure, but how is this even a real thing? How is this possible? What are we looking at? What is this? Back in 2016, researchers working in the Black Sea found these very strong currents. Currents of water flowing at the bottom of the sea like its own river almost. If this 115-foot deep river was on land instead of, well, under the Black Sea, it would be ranked number 6 in the world for the amount of volume alone that's constantly rushing through it. So pretty impressive. The river carries heavy sediments along the seafloor, hence why it makes those grooves over time. And yeah, over time those currents carve out their own path, and now it's massive and extremely powerful and unstoppable. But luckily for us, you need a deep sea rover to take a good look, so you're not gonna fall in anytime soon. Number 2, deep waste. I mentioned some deep sea plastic on this channel before, but this 2021 discovery is just a new low, pun intended. Right off the coast of LA, hiding around 4,000 feet below the ocean's surface, sitting there for quite a long time, were literal barrels of garbage, just waste. The plume of evil coming off of these things also, it looks like a nuclear wasteland. Probably because it is a literal nuclear wasteland. How horrible is that? There weren't 30 or 40 of these barrels also, in case you're wondering. There were thousands. Around 27,000 were found. 2 weeks of searching with subs. What a sad expedition that must have been. Oh my. These barrels were dropping into the ocean around 1947 to around 1961. That's the window of time. You'd think after barrel 5,000, somebody would be like, this feels wrong. I don't know. And finally, number 1. Beneath a glacier. We had to end this part 3 on some new footage from the bottom of an Antarctic glacier. And this glacier also, in case you're wondering, is the size of Florida. So if you're imagining like a big ice cube, it's a bit bigger than that, just a little bit. This is like finding the bottom of a continent. This thing is massive. And we sent a rover underneath all of it. How scary is that? If it were to collapse, our sea levels would rise 10 feet, just to give you an idea of how big it is. And in 2019, researchers drilled 2,300 feet right through the Thwaites Glacier and dropped a robot with a camera down, and then they just roamed around and they saw this. Hold your breath. This is the first time we've ever seen the grounding zone of a massive glacier. There's only 1 meter of space between the bottom of the glacier and the rocky seafloor. Could you go down there? I don't think I could. I would swim underneath it and pretend like I'm lifting it up, you know? Just kidding. I wouldn't even get into the submarine to go down this hole. Not a chance. Also, can we not drill through a glacier the size of Florida? Just sounds like a bad idea. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe leave this project alone. Kicking off our list at number 10, a mammoth tusk. Scientists are currently trying to bring the woolly mammoth back to life, so it's fitting that we throw this recent discovery on our list here. Back in 2019, scientists from Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, they were poking around the ocean floor. They were poking around 10,000 feet, not too far off the coast of California, and they found what they thought was an elephant tusk. Now that by itself would be a pretty neat discovery. Animal remains in the deep sea, let's go, that's great. No, this one was even better. We found a mammoth tusk. At first, the team only grabbed a small sample, but last year, in July, they were able to return and get the entire thing. Voila! It belonged to a Colombian mammoth. Those were mammoths that didn't have a lot of hair. They didn't need it. They lived in North America, so things got a little warm sometimes. 10,000 years after they died off, we're still finding their tusks. What do you think about bringing them back to life? Should we do that? Sound off below. I say no. Definitely not. They're way too big and scary. Also, they died before. They'll probably die again. Sorry, I don't know. Number 9, giant phantom jellyfish. Beautiful? Yes. Terrifying and for sure an alien? Also yes. This beast was discovered back in 2021 in, you guessed it, Monterey Bay. The classic spot apparently for sea monsters. The research team sent in a deep sea robot to take a look into the abyss, and they discovered this phantom giant jellyfish again. Yeah, I said again. Originally, this jellyfish was documented back in 1899, living at depths of 3,000 to 13,000 feet. It's, yeah, more than fair. She's hard to catch. Who is she down there? Never know. But luckily, we got a video of her in action last year. Check it out. This is why I don't ever go in the oceans. Ever. Cheers. Number 8. Deep sea anglerfish. These guys are so scary, we have to talk about them. Living at depths of over 6,000 feet, the deep sea anglerfish lives in complete darkness. Like Vin Diesel in Pitch Black. It was first discovered back in 1833 when it washed ashore in Greenland and was then taken to Johann Christopher Hangman Reinhardt in Denmark. It was first referred to as the football fish or the man gobbler. Great names, okay. Female anglerfish have a glowing lure at the top of their head. That's how we recognize them. It's like the whoop thing, right, in Finding Nemo. It's scary and it's something I'm glad hides at the bottom of our oceans, but it's needed for their survival. The light is created due to bioluminescent bacteria. Thousands of fish have it, and in the deep sea, anglerfish uses it to hunt. It draws fish in right in front of its massive, scary mouth and then just, they see the disco light, and then moments later they see another light, the light of the fish lords. The spiny dorsal fin hangs over their head. It's called an esca, it's an organ, and it emits photophore light. It's a main method of hunting, which is pretty badass. It kind of has to be because it has no arms or anything. It's just a big scary face moving around the ocean. And as for prey, well, she'll take what she can get, no matter how big.
Well, they ate it head first, because this thing probably came in to look at the light that the anglerfish has, and then the anglerfish grabbed it and then sort of swallowed it, and its stomach has expanded to sort of fit it all in.
The deep sea anglerfish can expand their jaw and stomach, and they can eat prey that's twice the size of them, although they often eat shrimps, snails, and other smaller fish. But once you're in, you're tucked, you're not going anywhere. You're screwed. The males actually aren't equipped with the natural lure of light, and when they reach adulthood, their digestive system no longer functions. So it needs one of these leading ladies to survive. I'll let that speak for itself. Number 7, old coral reefs. Or dying coral reefs. This one's actually kind of sad. After all, the list is dark discoveries. These are all scary or dark, literal darkness for some of them. Back in 2009, after a 4-week expedition to explore the deep ocean just southwest of Tasmania, scientists found deep water coral reefs, which is exciting at first until they realized that these coral reefs are dying. They're on their way out. So now there needs to be more research done into why exactly these reefs are dying. We would like to know that. That's kind of something we're working on currently. If the reason they're dying happens to extend to the shallow reefs as well, this could cause massive problems for both marine life and us, our human life. Scientists need to figure out whether the coral was dying because of the ocean warming up, maybe it was disease, or perhaps it was an increase in ocean acidity. Whatever the case is, if it extends into shallower water, it's bad news for us. 25% of marine life would lose their habitat. The coastal fishing industry would be affected, of course, so no more fish and chip specials. Save the ocean, you know? For red lobster's sake, let's smarten up and save the ocean. Number 6, Chuck Lagoon. This lagoon was Japan's main base during the war, but come 1944, the United States launched an attack, which some deem as Japan's Pearl Harbor, where 60 ships were sunk and around 250 planes as well. So for 70 years, there's been a massive graveyard, literally just sitting in the depths of the Pacific, and it wasn't until recently where we got a good look at these haunting artifacts from history. This photographer went down, took some photos, and said it was one of the scariest shoots ever. They described the atmosphere, filled of course with, human skulls, remains, gas masks, bullets. Obviously it was haunting to look at. Nobody wanted to go down, so that's when we send in a submarine. That's when we send in a drone, because we don't like to look at skulls and picking up stuff out of the sand. We don't like to do that. Nobody was expecting these artifacts to be that well preserved after all this time too. Like all these things, even a mammoth tusk, these are all in pristine condition almost. It's like the ocean's haunting and unexplored. Number 5, holes. If you have trypophobia, you may want to skip this one. Or face your fears together. I don't like holes either. I'm diving in. Let's do it. Off the coast of Big Sur, California, which is a real place and not just a Mac update, a survey revealed about 15,000 holes on the bottom of the ocean, and they're all the same size, which is weird. They all measure up to be 11 meters wide and 1 meter deep. The team at Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, our friends, they found about 15,000 of these, and then they found 5,000 more that were even bigger. The little guys are micro depressions in the earth, and the big ones are pockmarks. Initially, scientists here thought that it was methane underneath the seafloor coming out to say hi and, leaving a big crater, big poof. So rovers went down there, tests were done, no methane. In fact, there hasn't even been any methane for 50,000 years. So what's going on here? These craters are doing a pretty good job with the ecosystem though, wildly, because now there's deep sea creatures just living in them. They even found a whale skull just laying in one. Imagine being a crab, coming home to that. I throw up. I go blink. Little bubble of puke in the ocean. Number 4, MV Derbyshire. This ship was twice the size of the Titanic, but James Cameron didn't make a movie about it, so you may not have heard about it. Let me fill you in. I'm not James Cameron, but I'll do my best. The MV Derbyshire was the biggest British registered merchant ship of all time to sink. That's an odd brag when you think about it. But she was assembled back in 1976 and lost in 1980 en route from Canada to Japan. A Mayday distress call was never issued, and the ship was following proper ocean routes with weather routing companies, so they were doing all the right things, yet somehow it sank. September 15th, 1980, a search began for the missing ship and crew, but 6 days later, the search was called off. Nothing was found, not even a clue, honestly. The ship was declared lost. The sister ship of the Derbyshire ended up sinking as well due to a deck cracking, so the families urged officials to search again. Come 1994, the Derbyshire was found. Number 3, a huge squid. I'll talk about this thing every chance I get. I hope you haven't seen or heard about this because I slept a lot better the less I knew, honestly. The big fin squid, the BFS, the big squid, is rarely seen, hence why it's on our list here today. It actually lurks in many oceans, hiding in the deep. The big fin squid lives in the permanent dark zones of the ocean around 1,200 meters or 4,000 feet deep in the sea. So the guy can't see anything. He's blind down there, as are most of these monsters. On November 11th, 2007, an ROV was searching around the deepest, darkest waters in the Gulf of Mexico, and lucky for us, they got one on film. Yeah, 23 feet long. I know you're probably wondering as soon as you saw that video. Depth perception is like, oh, maybe it's small, maybe it's this. Nope, stupidly large. They look like balloons, scary, haunting balloons, just casually floating, watching you. I hate how calm it looks too. It looks like it locked onto you, like it's like kinda following your moves. Is this a boss battle? This feels like a boss battle. Let's move on, this guy's scary. Number 2, Siphonophore. Siphonophores, okay, where do I even begin? This is a real thing, not an alien? Okay, cool. Upon first glance, this appears to be a single multicellular organism, but they're actually an entire colony of polyps and medusoids that are collectively known as a zooid. Yep, I'm saying real words, I'm not just making them up. A few years ago, scientists found the longest siphonophore ever. They found it and it was 154 feet long. If you thought that last creature was long, this thing is stupid. Just a huge long piece of spaghetti just floating around in the ocean. But really it's actually not spaghetti, it's a bunch of different little creatures all working together. Reading up about this thing, there was a quote that I read and it said, "We at least need to know what's down there." No, we don't. Leave it alone. Leave everything, leave it alone down there. I can't even deal with a spider in the apartment. Where do I even begin with this? And finally, number 1, an ancient city. We'll end this list with a recent discovery. The lost Egyptian city of Heraklion was found after disappearing under the Mediterranean Sea 1200 years ago. Now this city has a bit of history behind it, you know, being founded in the 8th century BC and all, and researchers believe Heraklion was the port that you'd arrive in if you were to travel back then. Well, recently, last summer in 2021, more to this ancient sunken city was found in Egypt, and it's changing history, dare I say. This was led by the European Institute for Underwater Archaeology. This sunken military vessel, this 25-meter ship, was found in this sunken ancient city. In another part of this lost city, remains of a Greek funerary area was also discovered, dating back to around the 4th century BC. So this discovery connects the historical dots for us. Greek merchants living in the ancient Egyptian city. This tells us that the Greeks settled here during the late pharaoh dynasties, which is wild. We're literally just connecting all these pieces of this historical puzzle. And also we're finding treasure at the same time, so it's not all scary fish. We just need to send cameras and submarines underwater everywhere and just check under every shell. What a wild list this was.
At number 10, we have an octopus nursery. 8-legged alien looking things with suction cups all over their arms and beaks for mouths. Octopus are creepy looking things, and to top it all off, they can camouflage like a Navy SEAL, and they are super smart. If these are the kind of things that make your skin crawl, then just running into one of these guys would probably freak you out. Well, on the underwater expedition at the Davidson Seamount, there was a rather shocking discovery. They had a remote probe that was on the ocean floor around 10,000 feet, and they came across which seemed to be an octopus that was next to not just one, not just two, but a group of 1,000 octopuses in a nursery. They were all there laying their eggs and using the heat from the volcanic vent to keep them warm. I would hate to be the guy who accidentally steps into that crack and then gets devoured by thousands of sticky arms. But if you're at 10,000 feet underwater, you probably are already screwed. At number 9, we have the Siberian lake monster. Of course, if we're doing a list of scary things that live underwater, we have to throw a giant mysterious sea monster on here. What separates the Siberian lake monster from other more popular guys that we have seen like Loch Ness and that kind of stuff is that underwater scans have actually picked this guy up. This thing is deep in Lake Labinkur, and some radar has shown that it looks like a 33-foot long creature is living there. Now this is probably just a skeleton, but if this thing is dead, it means that there was once a giant man-eating monster in this lake. I thought we were supposed to be safe in freshwater. They've nicknamed this thing the Devil, so you know he's a good time and loves company. So next time you go up to the cottage and you're swimming in the water and you feel safe, remember there might be a giant monster lurking underneath the water ready to turn you into a side dish. At number 8, we have the blue hole. Now there are several blue holes in the world. There's one in Belize, there's one in the Red Sea, there's a giant one in my heart that was left there from when Reboot ended on a cliffhanger. How are you going to end a show that so many people fell in love with on a cliffhanger? I will never trust again. Well, this one is between Cape Verde and the Caribbean islands. Scientists are really confused about this thing. It's a crack in the bottom of the ocean floor and is several thousand miles long. What's strange about this is there's no explanation of how this happened. It might have been tectonic plates moving around, but when this happened, the Earth will probably start to repair itself and there's been no sign of this. My theory is this is where Godzilla goes to sleep at night. I mean, it seems like the most logical answer. It's either that or the gateway to hell. Like, come on guys, I'm doing real science work here. At number 7, we have the Yonaguni Complex. This was discovered by scuba divers in the 1980s. I think that's the scariest part about this one. Could you imagine going scuba diving back in the 80s? The technology back then must have been a tube going up to some guy who would blast fresh air down to you using a bicycle pump. I don't even think they had decompression sickness figured out back then. The chances of you coming up the bends was probably super high. Well, if it wasn't for a few divers divers in Japan who are willing to sacrifice it all to look at some cool stuff, we wouldn't know anything about the Yonaguni complex. It's still a mystery as to what this thing is. It looks like some temples that might have existed thousands of years ago, but when the ice age decided to melt, it would have covered this entire area. This could be why an entire civilization got plunged underwater. Or the temple could have been on a cliff, and then when a massive earthquake hit, it knocked the temple into the water. But like everything in life, there are some haters who say this whole thing is just a natural rock formation. Some people just want to ruin everything. At number 6, we have Anacortes Sista Twista. One of the reasons why the underwater world is such a mystery is because we find things like this in there. Sure, there are beautiful things down there like bright fish and chubby marine mammals, but there's also the unknown, unidentified organisms like Anacortes Sista Twista, which should be the name of an 80s hair metal band. But what is this thing? Well, it's a protist. And what is a protist, you may ask? Well, it's an organism that doesn't belong to any animal group, fungus, or plant group. What does that mean? I really have no idea, you guys. I think it means it could be an alien. Some alien came down to Earth for a swim and then scraped its knee on some coral, and now we have alien creatures running around the ocean, probably waiting for you to pee so it can swim up your pee hole and then work its way into your brain. It's really the only logical answer. At number 5, we have the Bimini Road. How were the pyramids made? Was it aliens coming down to share their technology and secrets with us, or was it just thousands upon thousands of slaves who sacrificed their lives and their spines to build them? Well, we don't know and we may never know, but the Bimini Road is another one of these mysteries. It's off the coast of the Bahamas, and it looks like it could have been a pathway that was placed perfectly with giant slabs of rock. Similar to the way the pyramids were made, it seems that these large slabs of rock were too large to be moved by man, and also like the pyramids, these giant slabs were also perfectly placed so well. So where does everyone's mind go when something like this happens? Well, magic or aliens. The logical answer is that this is a natural phenomenon of the water moving and hitting the rocks to make these formations, but people think that this was made using advanced technology from aliens and could have been the road to Atlantis. Honestly, I like the Atlantis theory much better. It's more fun. At number 4, we have colossal squid. Yeah, this thing is a big no thanks for me. So everyone always talks about how there might be sea monsters out there, but this thing actually exists. There's never been one caught alive, but several have washed onto shores dead, and they are massive. The largest one ever discovered was 45 feet long, and it was dead. So you know there was an even bigger one out there that killed this guy. They don't even have suckers on their tentacles, they have hooks. Let me say that again. This squid has 10 giant arms covered in hooks. This thing is straight out of a horror movie. Scientists aren't even sure what something this big eats. They think it probably feeds on whales or your deepest, darkest fears. I wouldn't be surprised if the colossal squid works part-time as a gatekeeper for hell. It makes me think that the old Greek stories about the Kraken might have been real. At number 3, we have underwater circles. Giant formations of circles that are formed underwater and nobody knows how they got there. These mysteries were discovered off the coast of North Carolina, Florida, and Belize. Now, what are they? Like many things on this list, myself and the entire scientific community have no idea. But here are some theories. Maybe they were formed naturally by either two things, water currents or some sort of animal mating ritual. Another idea is that these things were made by ancient civilizations before the Ice Age. All these things would have been above ground and might have been art left over by some old-timey tribes. And the third theory is that they look kind of like a bullseye, so it might be some sort of nuclear missile target, and if you hit it hard enough, the explosion will cause some sort of major natural disaster like an earthquake or tsunami, or if we're lucky, both. At number 2, we have Megalodon. If you have a fear of sharks, you're gonna love this one. Megalodon was a prehistoric shark that was even bigger than the giant hooked tentacle beast that was earlier on this list. If you've already forgotten about the colossal squid, it clocked in at around 45 feet long, where Megalodon was closer to 60 feet long. It was a 60-foot shark that could probably rip a blue whale in half in one bite. Well, maybe not that, but it was still a gargantuan creature with teeth the size of Brock Lesnar's fists. This thing wouldn't even chew you, it would just swallow you whole and then fart your skeleton out into the dark, cold ocean. At number 1 on our list, we have Giant Eyeball. A mysterious giant eyeball washed onto the shore of a Florida beach back in October of 2012. I don't know any other kind of giant eyeball other than a mysterious one. There's no super common regular giant eyeball just lying around. But this is also Florida. This is the state where people smoke crack at weddings and kiss alligators on the lips, so maybe it's a little more common over there. Well, this giant eyeball was found by genocovalescence Apache, and he didn't know what the hell to make of it, so he took it home and then stuck it in his freezer. Then he called the cops, and the cops came in and told him, "We don't do giant eyeballs on the beach. You have to call the wildlife people." And then he called the wildlife people, and they were like, "What the hell is that?" And he was like, "I don't know. I brought it to you guys to try and figure out what it is." And then some people were like, "Maybe it's a sea monster." And other people are like, "No, it's probably from a marlin." And I think in the end, no one really knew what the hell it was. But just so you know, there's giant eyeballs out there just laying around the beach sometime.
In our number 10 spot today, we have musical instruments. 2 parts of a destroyed clarinet as well as a violin that was played by bandmaster Wallace Hartley were found among the wreckage of the Titanic. I know musical instruments aren't exactly a terrifying discovery, but the discovery reminds us of the heartbreaking story of the Titanic's band. As the Titanic sank, it is famously known that the band played on despite the absolutely horrific incident that was taking place around them. At first, it was widely believed that they did this because they were ordered to, and for the record, if this were the case, that still would have been insanely brave of them. But as it turns out, this is far from true. The band members were in fact not ship employees, which means that they had the same rights as any passengers to leave. So why didn't they? Well, it is now widely believed that it most likely was so that they could use their music to help calm people so that they wouldn't panic. That's some major bravery right there. In our number 9 spot today, we have a men's shoe. This artifact is one of the rarest to be shown of the items that have been recovered from the Titanic wreckage because of the fact that it is in such poor condition. All that remains of the shoe are the welt, top cap, and just a touch of the insole. This artifact does a couple things. It reminds you of the very real humans who became victims of this tragedy, and it also reminds you of the unrelenting nature of the ocean. Seeing the personal belongings of the passengers, regardless of knowing who specifically the shoe belonged to in their story, just adds a personal element, like you almost knew them. And then seeing how torn up the shoe has become is a strong reminder to us all that we truly are no match for Mother Nature, and the ocean is one of the most powerful and frightening things on the earth. In our number 8 spot today, we have a love letter. Richard Geddes was a cabin attendant on the Titanic who wrote a love letter to his wife while aboard, but unfortunately she would never go on to receive it. The letter was written on the original Titanic stationery, and it even had its original White Star Line envelope when it was found. While this story in itself is of course extremely sad, and again one of those reminders of the human side of those who were in this incident, this letter also contained something else beside utterings and confessions of love. It also featured a description that Richard wrote for his wife of a near collision that the Titanic had with the SS City of New York, obviously prior to the terrible iceberg incident. There were people who had witnessed this near collision and believed that it was a bad omen for the Titanic. In our number 7 spot today, we have a pocket watch. Okay, this artifact most certainly isn't the scariest one on today's list, but the story behind who it belonged to is one for the books. Sinai Cantor was 34 years old when he was a passenger on the Titanic. On board with him was his wife Miriam, and the pair were from Russia. They purchased second-class passenger tickets, which at the time cost them £26, which is about $3,666 in today's money. When tragedy struck and the Titanic was sinking, Sinai immediately thought of his wife. He was able to get her aboard one of the life rafts thankfully, and as far as I know, she was rescued from the icy waters. Unfortunately, the same could not be said for him, however, as he ended up being one of those who passed away in the sinking of the ship. During rescue efforts, this pocket watch ended up being recovered from his body. In our number 6 spot today, we have the inspection card. This inspection card once belonged to a woman named Marion Meanwell. What could possibly be worrisome about an inspection card? Well, it shows how Marion was not intended to be on the Titanic, but by some turn of events, she unfortunately found herself as one of the passengers. The card shows that she was originally meant to be traveling on a ship called the Majestic. For some reason, the trip she originally had planned was delayed, and she instead was assigned to the ill-fated Titanic. You can see that the word Majestic was crossed out on her card, which shows us the change in plans. If only people were able to see what was about to strike and could have warned her. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Titanic radio. Okay, don't yell at me. This is a piece of the ship that has not yet been recovered, but it's the focus of much debate on whether or not it should be retrieved from the wreckage. Known in 1912 as the Marconi wireless telegraph machine, the radio on the Titanic sent distress calls to nearby ships that ended up saving the lives of 700 people in lifeboats. Despite how many people died in the Titanic tragedy, many of their bodies have never been recovered, which is why there were debates about whether or not to retrieve the artifact because of the fact that there might still be remains located in the same area as the radio is. Lawyers have argued against the recovery of the radio because the dive plan did not include the prospect of there being human remains located down there. It also was argued because in order to retrieve it, they would need to cut into the ship's radio compartment, which was strongly opposed by preservation advocates. As of right now, it appears as though the dive to retrieve the radio will still occur, but it isn't exactly clear when. This radio would be a very valuable artifact, but it also would hold an eerie tale of exactly when and how the radio was used during the final moments of the Titanic. In our number 4 spot today, we have the telegraph. Separate from the radio we just talked about, the ship's telegraph machine was recovered in 1987, and this was used to relay commands to the engine room. So it was used as a communication device on board rather than to communicate with other ships. This telegraph machine is likely the one that was used to communicate to turn away from the iceberg in the North Atlantic Ocean. Unfortunately, these commands came way too late as the ship struck the iceberg only 37 seconds after it was finally seen, and we all know what happened next. This telegraph was actually part of a Titanic auction that featured over 5,000 recovered artifacts that were selling for a combined some $200 million. In our number 3 spot today, we have the bell. The bell from the crow's nest of the Titanic was recovered from the wreckage and returned to land, where it now resides in the Titanic Museum. The eerie story behind this bell is that it would have been the one that was rung 3 times by the lookout, Frederick Fleet, in order to attempt to warn of the iceberg that was ahead. Frederick, as well as the other lookout who was with him, Reginald Lee, both ended up thankfully surviving the incident and went on to later explain what happened from their point of view. They explained that if they had been given binoculars to assist with their job, they could have seen the iceberg sooner. When asked how much sooner, Frederick replied, "Well, enough to get out of the way." In our number 2 spot today, we have the Big Piece. This was a 15-ton section of the Titanic that ended up being recovered from the ocean floor. The wreckage of the Titanic was not found until 1985, when oceanographer Robert Ballard was doing a secret underwater expedition. The Big Piece is about 26 by 12 feet, and it was once a section of the ship's starboard side hull. This piece also has a part of the original support beam that attached this piece to the frame of the ship. It is said that where this piece was located on the ship, basically everything else around it was absolutely obliterated when the ship split in two. This artifact is said to be the reminder of the most violent aspect of the sinking of the ship, which is a horrifying thought. It was found among many other smaller pieces of the ship that had all been broken up. In our number 1 spot today, we have this cherub statue. In the remnants of the Titanic, they recovered a broken cherub statue that once found its home on the grand staircase of the Titanic. Aside from cherubs just being kind of creepy in general, there's something exceptionally eerie about this piece of religious iconography being at the center of such a huge disaster, as well as being found among the wreckage years later. Cherubs are usually known as bearers of the throne or creatures who attend to God, so it's just a little creepy to have one at the scene of a terrible disaster, as well as it making through all of the years and years that the Titanic was underwater waiting to be found.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Fangtooth. A nice scary name off the hop. Nice, we love it. This first deep sea discovery comes from the fine researchers at Monterey Bay Research Institute, MBARI. Every time you see a deep sea video that blows your mind, more often than not it's the MBARI crew. They like to go deep down and get some scary stuff. The Fangtooth are often found around 1,700 feet deep. They live in the deep dark depths of the Marianas Trench. I really hope they stay there. In relation to their body size, this teeth, the largest teeth in the ocean, easily. I mean, look at this. It's kind of hard not to make fun of them. These guys have a special little pocket in the roof of their mouths, which are used to store their teeth so they actually, close their mouths. In case you're wondering, how it's so big and all. They store them. They have a trunk for their teeth. That's so alien. Why are fish so alien? The Fangtooth has been described by the MBARI team as a face only a mother could love. What a roast that is. They don't have very good eyesight at all, but again, with teeth like that, who needs eyes, really? These guys hunt just by bumping into their prey. They sense vibrations and movements in the water, just like Daredevil. Number 9, Grand Rojo jellyfish. First discovered in the mid-90s, although they weren't officially categorized as a new species until 2003, the Grand Rojo jellyfish, for 13 years we were just confused on what we were looking at, or what to call them. Not only did their discovery come with a new species classification, but also a new subfamily, so it was a pretty big deal. Worth the wait, I would say. The species was originally called Big Ugly, which again, unnecessary roast for a deep sea fish. Let's just say Big Scary. Can we say Big Scary? That's better. Why does it have to be Big Ugly? Eventually they landed on Big Red, which is nice. We'll take that. These jellyfish are the largest of all sea jellies, obviously. They grow to around 76 centimeters in diameter, and they have 4 to 7 arms, like thick, fleshy arms, rather than, weak tentacles that we're used to seeing on jellyfish. Oh, they're so... I could be a jellyfish. I have jellyfish movements. While most jellies are transparent, these guys are red all over because, it's haunting that way. And because of their deep sea habitat, there's still so much we don't know about them, and only 23 have ever been found and identified in real life. So the research is currently lacking, to be honest. Scientists are doing their best to get us some more clips, but they're rare. They're like aliens. It's gonna take some time to find them all, like Pokemon. Give us a minute. Number 8, the barrel-eye fish. This thing looks like an alien spaceship. I love this. Whatever fish this is, I want one. I'm kidding, leave it, we should leave it. 2 green alien eggs piloting a weird ship. This deep sea troublemaker is called a barrel-eye fish. It's also known as a spookfish, which makes more sense. They look like a Halloween decoration, for starters. The main attraction here, of course, are their large protruding telescopic eyes that are stored inside its transparent head. Yeah, take a minute to just kind of take that in. Its big head is see-through. We can see anything on this guy's mind. Just a fish dome made of soft, see-through tissue. We love that. They're unable to withstand change in pressure, so it's a good idea, very good idea, to leave the barrel-eye fish where they belong, or else their heads will just, it'll be ugly. After their initial discovery, the only way people who hadn't seen them in the deep, who wanted to see them, was through drawings. If I found a see-through fish and had to draw it for historians, I'd be like, hang on. No, what? I would be so screwed. They're often found around 800 meters deep in the ocean, pretty motionless as well. Again, very alien-like. Just sitting there on autopilot, just hovering. Number 7, the vampire squid. The vampire squid is the last surviving member of its order and has similarities with both the squid as well as the octopus. So basically, it's the most threatening animal I can imagine, honestly, and haunting to look at, of course. Also, its name is vampire squid, so obviously something's afoot here. Obviously, it's a little bit dangerous. 2 of these creatures somehow meeting in the middle. Just like a jellyfish, the vampire squid has a gelatinous body that helps it move quicker through the depths of the sea. The vampire squid is covered in light-producing organs called photophores, which they're able to use in a way that produces disorienting light flashes, to confuse its prey. Yeah, vampire disco attack. It'll just flash lights and dance in your face and you'll be like, oh shh. While the vampire squid doesn't have ink to blast out at its enemies, it does have the ability to shoot out a bioluminescent mucus. Glowy puke. That's almost worse than ink, in my humble opinion. That's way worse than ink. Also, this squid is able to regenerate its arms. So I think this all goes to say that if you're in a fight with a vampire squid, well, I really hope you came prepared because he definitely is. He's growing arms, he's dancing in your face, he's ready to go. Number 6, predatory tunicate. The predatory tunicate is like the Venus flytrap of the deep sea. Doesn't that sound haunting already? Predatory tunicate is straight up one of the most unique creatures I've ever learned about working on this channel. Honestly. Looks like something you'd fight in Super Mario Sunshine. How is that a real thing? What in the hell? They start off life like tadpoles do. Then they swim until they find a perfect spot, either along a canyon wall or the seafloor or something sturdy. Once they found their spot, they plant themselves using a natural adhesive that they produce. Once planted, they will undergo a huge change. Clearly. And this is where they'll stay for the rest of their lives. They're super picky about where they set up camp because, well, they're there forever. This is their new home, essentially. On the side of a rock right next to Coral Lane. Come visit. Let's do it. In order to find the perfect spot, they need to make sure that both the chemicals in the water in that area, as well as the temperature of the water, is just right. And unfortunately, if these guys do get moved from their location and chose to make their home somewhere else, they will die. So it's imperative that we leave them alone. Know what I'm saying? Don't be poking anything in the ocean. Hit that thumbs up. Don't be hitting fish. They basically wait for food to drift on by, and then just like a Venus flytrap, when they get their meal in their mouths will close automatically until they're done digesting. Then they'll just go and then open back up. Predatory tunicate is a point of study in the medical world because they actually have been known to help with more serious medical conditions. So as scary and weird as it is to look at, he's literally saving lives. Number 5, snapping shrimp. I have to include a snapping shrimp because I always see these guys pop up on Reddit when I'm scrolling through in the dead of the night, and these guys will pop up and they'll haunt me. Snapping shrimp pack the hardest punch. They look nice, but they'll hit you before you even blink. Will Smith style, you won't even see it coming. Its punch is so powerful that it creates a sonic boom underwater. Here's a clip of a mantis shrimp punching through a fisherman's gear.
Ow! Ow! That really hurt. This dude grabbed a hold of my booty, put a hole in this booty.
He has no idea what he just pulled out of the depths of the sea. This thing just punched through skin and gear, just like that. And he's tiny. Pistol shrimp hit their prey at 100 kilometers an hour, and in doing so, a large air bubble is created, and because of this, Mike Tyson shrimp, he's so quick with the right hook, the following pop is around 200 decibels. So should the mantis shrimp miss that first punch, the sound alone will stun their prey. Or if they're lucky, that sound will kill them, instead of, into their head. Number 4, the long-arm squid. Ooh, long-arm boys, here we are. The big fin squid is not often seen, and honestly thank goodness for that because they're so terrifying to look at, as are the other things on this list. They can be found in many different oceans, but they live in the permanently dark zone, so you don't have to worry about your foot touching one anytime soon. They live at around 1,219 meters or 4,000 feet deep in the sea. On November 11th, 2007, as an ROV was searching around the dark waters in the Gulf of Mexico, it was able to catch one of these guys on film. While there's still a ton that remains a mystery about these elusive creatures, it's believed that they grow to be around 23 feet long. Yeah, they're really long. The real creepy stance that these guys have also, how they're so still, not a fan. So still and so large. Big forbidden deep sea spaghettis. No thank you. Number 3, giant isopods. Big nope on these ones, here we go. I can't do deep sea anything, so these videos are always exciting to me. My palms get sweaty when I'm making these scripts for you. These giant isopods, so scary. These large crustaceans can reach lengths around 15 inches, and while it's not the biggest deep sea creature of all time, it's still pretty insane for what this thing is. For example, this footage comes from the NOAA team. This was 5 years ago in the Gulf of Mexico. Take a look. Yeah, you thought bugs were gross. These things can swim so fast and then just attach themselves onto your back. Ugh, I'm never swimming again. That's so quick and so gross. Little legs. Oh, I hate those legs. Giant isopods get their size from what is known as deep sea gigantism, which is an evolutionary tendency for deep sea creatures to grow larger than their shallow water counterparts. It isn't exactly clear why this happens, but we see it in giant shrimp as well. It happens and we're like, what? It is thought that maybe it's because of the cold temperatures, which may increase cell life and lifespan, but still, we're pretty clueless at this point. Giant isopods are scavengers, which usually wait to collect scraps of what is left over from another predator's meal. Yeah, then they just scurry over with their big giant many legs and then just latch on. Number 2, deep sea anglerfish. I'm glad I put deep sea in there in case, you somehow forgot about these. Look, these fish are big and scary and they have tentacles flying out of them. They have the disco ball of death floating in front of their big scary mouths. We know that about these deep sea horrors by now. But what makes the anglerfish so unique in the ocean world is that the males will be attached for life. And I mean that in a literal sense. Male anglerfish do not look the same at all as the female. They are tiny, they can't even lift groceries. Look at these little dudes. So what they'll do is they'll find a suitable mate, bite into her stomach, their skin will then go and fuse together, and their blood will all be the same blood. How insane is that? Only a few years ago, we got footage of a mating pair, and it's crazy. Check this out. The males are much smaller than the females, and they can survive purely on the nutrients from the female's blood. Yeah, they're parasitic. Their entire life goal is to find a leading lady to do all the work. Yeah, must be nice, eh? Easy. To be fair, look at this guy. He can't hunt. This guy can't even book his own doctor's appointment. Think he's gonna go find dinner? No way. And finally, number 1, the Gulf of Mexico shipwreck. Yeah, I'm gonna include a Gulf of Mexico shipwreck for number 1 because we've talked about so many Gulf of Mexico horrors. I saw a ghost ship as a kid and that was it. I was scared forever, never going on a boat in the sea ever again. The Gulf of Mexico is no stranger to shipwrecks. There's about 4,000 laying down there right now. That's what happens when you steal buckets of gold and then you try and flee on a dinghy. You end up sinking a lot, more often than not. So when ex-con oil workers found this sunken ship, 26,000 feet below the surface, they were pumped. They immediately told the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, who later tried to explore the wreck, but during its first attempts, equipment kept failing. The sub they were planning on using as well kept malfunctioning right before departure. Video would cut out, sonar wouldn't work, so they sent the Navy out there. They sent a research sub as well, but the rover wasn't operational. The arms were too tiny as well, so they had no way of really taking a look into this thing and discovering it. That's for sure haunted. That's why I put it as number 1. That is a literal graveyard. Doesn't matter if it's below the water or above here. I wouldn't go into the woods and start exploring an area where like a plane crash happened. No chance. That's the same under the sea. Leave it alone. That's just bad juju. Those are shipwrecks. What are we doing?